3 years of pouring drinks and pretending I didn't have a past was supposed to make me invisible. That was the deal with witness protection. The promise Agent Harris made when I was 19 and terrified, testifying against Victor Volkov while his eyes burned holes through my skull from across that Chicago courtroom. Disappear into somewhere warm and forgettable, he'd said. Build a boring life. Stay unremarkable. Miami seemed like the right kind of wrong place to hide. Tourist city, transient population, nobody asking questions about a bartender working night shifts at a place called the Velvet Lounge. The name was aspirational at best. Velvet implied luxury we absolutely did not possess. The upholstery was vinyl, the lighting was dim to hide water stains, and the clientele ranged from lonely businessmen to college students ordering craft cocktails they couldn't properly appreciate. But it was mine in the way a routine becomes yours. I knew which regulars tipped well, which ones got handsy after the third bourbon, how to defuse arguments before they escalated. I'd memorized exit routes, kept my phone charged, maintained exactly 3 emergency contacts that would ring through to Agent Harris or his backup. Except 3 weeks ago, those numbers stopped working properly. Agent Harris called me on a Tuesday afternoon, unusual because he typically only reached out monthly. Turner, I'm being transferred. Different division, different cases. Someone new will make contact within 48 hours. Wait, what do you mean transferred? You've been my handler for 8 years. Protocol change, budget restructuring. You'll be fine. New contact will have the verification phrase. The line disconnected before I could ask more. Friday came and went. No new contact. I tried the emergency number Saturday morning and got disconnected tones, voicemail boxes that were full. By Sunday, I'd convinced myself it was typical federal inefficiency. Some paperwork delay. Harris had always complained about bureaucracy. Still, instinct hummed beneath my calm exterior. The same instinct that kept me alive at 19, when I'd seen Victor Volkov put a bullet through a man's skull in an alley behind a restaurant where I'd been taking out trash during my shift. I should have run then. Should have dropped the bag and sprinted back inside. Instead, I froze. And our eyes met across 15 feet of blood-spattered concrete. He'd smiled. Actually smiled, like we were sharing a private joke instead of a murder. 3 weeks without proper handler contact wasn't panic-worthy yet. 3 weeks plus the small wrongnesses accumulating around me. That was different. The black sedan that appeared on my street 2 nights in a row, parked in the same spot with no one getting in or out. The man in the grocery store who seemed to be shopping without buying anything, who I noticed in 3 different aisles before he left empty-handed. The sensation of being watched during my walk home Thursday night, strong enough that I'd circled 2 extra blocks and used the side entrance. I'd survived 8 years by trusting irrational fear. Friday night at the Velvet Lounge, Marco gathered the staff before opening. 6 of us crowded into the storage room that doubled as a break room. "I'm selling the place," he announced. "Family back in Athens needs me. Buyers taking over immediately. You'll all keep your jobs if you want them." Change meant visibility. New ownership meant new eyes, new questions, new opportunities for someone to notice the bartender who never talked about her past. "Who bought it?" I asked. "Investment group out of New York. Representatives coming tonight to introduce himself." Be professional, forgettable, exactly competent enough to keep the job, but not interesting enough to remember. That evening, Miami staged a dramatic performance. Thunder rolled in around 8, proper thunder that made the building shudder, followed by rain that turned streets into rivers. Half our usual Friday crowd never showed. By 9:30, we had maybe 15 people scattered across tables and bar stools. I was wiping down the bar when the door opened and he walked in. Tall, over 6 feet easily, dark hair swept back from his face. Charcoal suit that actually fit properly, tailored to shoulders that suggested he spent time doing something physical. He scanned the room with precise attention, cataloging exits and occupants before his eyes landed on me. The assessment lasted 3 seconds. Long enough that I felt pinned beneath the weight of his focus. Then he moved toward the bar with purposeful strides. "Whiskey," he said when he reached me. Voice low, accent present but controlled. "Neat. Whatever you'd recommend." I reached for the Jameson decent middle shelf, poured 2 fingers into a rocks glass and set it in front of him. $8. He placed $100 on the bar without looking at it. "Keep it." That's excessive for one drink. Consider it a tip for working during a storm. He lifted the glass, took a sip, nodded. You've been here a while. Warning bells, quiet but insistent. 3 years. You're the new owner? Representative of Gabriel Fioraldi. I handle acquisitions and operations. He extended his hand. I hesitated before shaking it, his grip firm and warm, lasting slightly longer than professionally necessary. Jessica, I offered, using the surname I'd carried for 8 years without bothering to add it. Jessica, he repeated, like testing the weight of the name. Marco says you're reliable, never miss shifts. I try to be. Do you enjoy it? Bartending? The question caught me sideways. People didn't usually ask if I enjoyed my job. It pays bills. I'm good at it. Sufficient. Interesting word choice. He finished the whiskey. I'll be observing operations for the next week. Don't mind me. He moved to a corner booth after that, laptop open but barely looking at it. I felt his gaze return to me periodically throughout the night. By midnight when we closed, I'd convinced myself I was being paranoid again. Except he came back Saturday. Same booth, same whiskey, same penetrating attention. And Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. By Wednesday, I'd started documenting details. Expensive watch, different one each night. No wedding ring. Small scar near his left ear. The way he held himself suggested training. He was unfailingly polite, tipped absurdly well, never made inappropriate comments. And he watched me like he was solving an equation only he could see. Thursday night, the storm returned with friends. We had maybe 10 customers by 8, 5 by 9. Marco had gone home early, trusting me to close alone. Gabriel arrived at 9:30, exactly on schedule, water running off his coat. He ordered his usual drink. I delivered it personally, conscious of the empty space around us. Slow night, he observed. People are smart enough to stay home. But not you. I work here. Different obligation. He studied me with that unnerving intensity, then gestured to the seat across from him. Sit for a moment. Every instinct screamed not to. But refusing seemed more suspicious than accepting. You're very careful, Gabriel said quietly. Always aware of exits, who's entering, who's paying attention. Defensive posture disguised as professional awareness. Ice flooded my veins. I work in a bar. Being aware is survival. True. But your awareness goes beyond professional. You're watching for something specific. He leaned forward slightly. Or someone. I don't know what you mean. I think you do. I think you've been hiding a very long time, Jessica. I think you're tired of running but don't know how to stop. I stood abruptly. I need to finish closing. Of course. He didn't try to stop me. The last customers left around 10:15. I locked the door, set the alarm, grabbed my bag, and headed for the back exit. The rain had lessened to persistent drizzle. Gabriel was waiting under the overhang, umbrella in hand. My entire body went rigid. He saw it, raised his free hand in a calming gesture. I'm not here to hurt you, but we need to talk, and it can't wait. I don't have anything to discuss with you. Viktor Volkov escaped from federal custody 4 weeks ago. The words hit like physical blows. He's already killed 2 witnesses from his trial. Your handler, Agent Harris, was murdered 3 weeks ago trying to protect the first target. The world tilted sideways. I grabbed the door frame for stability. That's not possible. Harris called me 3 weeks ago. He called you to warn you without tipping off whoever leaked witness locations. Then he died trying to save someone he couldn't reach in time. Gabriel took a careful step closer. I know who you are, Jessica Turner. I know what you witnessed 8 years ago. I know why you've been hiding. And I know Victor is coming for you. How? Because I've been tracking you for 8 months. Not to harm you. To understand the woman who testified against my half-brother's killer and disappeared into federal protection. His half-brother. Paolo, Victor's victim, the man whose blood I'd seen splattered across concrete. I need to leave. Now. Tonight. Running won't save you this time. Victor has resources, contacts, patience. He'll find you wherever you hide. Gabriel moved closer. But I can protect you. There's one way. One guarantee that even Victor's world respects. What? He reached into his jacket, pulled out a small velvet box, opened it to reveal a simple gold band. Marry me, Gabriel said. And everything I thought I understood about survival shattered into pieces I didn't know how to reassemble. The night Gabriel Fioraldi became the Velvet Lounge's new owner marked the beginning of something I couldn't name yet, but felt deep in my bones. The official changeover happened on a Saturday, 3 days after Marco's announcement, and the atmosphere in the bar shifted like the barometric pressure before a hurricane. I arrived for my shift at 7 to find the place already buzzing with a different energy. Marco was there, of course, looking simultaneously relieved and nostalgic as he showed Gabriel around the space he'd built over 20 years. Gabriel moved through the bar with the kind of confident ownership that suggested he'd done this before, his dark eyes taking in every detail with surgical precision. He was taller than I'd initially registered when he'd visited that rainy Thursday, easily 6'2" or 6'3", with broad shoulders that filled out his tailored navy suit in a way that suggested he hadn't always worn expensive clothes. There was something underneath the polish, something rougher and more dangerous that the designer fabric couldn't quite conceal. Jessica. Marco called me over, his Greek accent thicker than usual. Come meet Mr. Fioraldi officially. I approached cautiously, aware that every interaction with new management was a potential minefield. Gabriel extended his hand, and I shook it with what I hoped was professional detachment. His grip was firm, warm, and lasted exactly 1 second longer than necessary, long enough for me to notice the calluses on his palm that expensive suits shouldn't have. We've met briefly, Gabriel said, his voice carrying that same controlled accent I'd noticed before. Italian, definitely, but smoothed by years of careful American influence. You're the one Marco says never misses a shift, never complains, handles the difficult customers with grace. I just do my job, I replied evenly. That's what makes you exceptional. Most people in this city are either hustling to get somewhere else or drowning where they landed. You seem content exactly where you are. The observation was too accurate to be comfortable. The Velvet Lounge has been good to me. Then I hope to keep it that way. His dark eyes held mine for a beat too long before he turned back to Marco. Shall we finish the walkthrough? The rest of the evening passed in a blur of familiar routine, punctuated by Gabriel's presence. He didn't sit at the bar where owners typically position themselves to observe operations. Instead, he chose a corner booth with clear sightlines to both entrances, the register, and most importantly, to me. I felt his attention like a physical weight throughout my shift, cataloging my movements, my interactions, the practiced efficiency with which I mixed drinks and deflected unwanted advances. Around 11, during a lull between the dinner crowd and the late-night regulars, I found myself wiping down glasses behind the bar when I looked up to find Gabriel standing directly in front of me. I hadn't heard him approach, which sent a spike of adrenaline through my system. You move differently when you think no one's watching, he observed quietly. My hands stilled on the glass. Excuse me? More efficiently, less performance. You're good at your job, but you're better when you're not consciously playing the role of bartender. He tilted his head slightly, studying me like I was a painting in a museum. What are you really good at, Jessica? Pouring drinks, managing difficult people, remembering orders, surviving, he countered. That's what you're really good at. I recognize it because I see it in the mirror every morning. Before I could formulate a response that wasn't either a confession or an outright lie, a group of college kids stumbled in, loud and already drunk from wherever they'd been before. Gabriel stepped back smoothly, returning to his booth and his laptop that I suspected was more prop than actual work. He stayed until closing, watching Marco leave with misty eyes and promises to visit, watching the last customers filter out into the Miami night. When I flipped the close sign and began my nightly routine, he remained in his booth, fingers steepled, dark eyes tracking my every movement. You can leave, I said without looking at him. I've got a key. I close alone all the time. I'm the owner now. I want to understand the full operation. A pause, including what happens when you think you're unobserved. I turned to face him directly. Nothing happens when I'm unobserved. I clean, I count the register, I lock up, I go home. It's not complicated. Everything about you is complicated. Gabriel stood, moving toward the bar with that same predatory grace. You're 27 years old, working a job that requires no background checks, living in a city where nobody asks questions. You have no social media presence, no digital footprint beyond basic utility bills. You pay cash for everything when you can. You've never called in sick in 3 years. Ice flooded my veins. You've been investigating me? Due diligence. I buy businesses. I learn about the people who make them run. He leaned against the bar, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive with notes of cedar and bergamot. But your absence of information is more revealing than most people's entire life stories. Maybe I just value privacy. Maybe. Or maybe you're hiding from something. Someone. His voice dropped lower. Question is whether I should be concerned about that someone walking through my door looking for you. I forced myself to hold his gaze, to not let the panic show. I'm not in any trouble. I just prefer to keep my personal life separate from work. Commendable. But here's the thing about people who've spent years hiding. They develop patterns. Little tells. Gabriel reached across the bar, not touching me, but close. You count exits reflexively. You position yourself to see entrances. You never sit with your back exposed. You assess every person who walks in within 3 seconds of their arrival. That's not privacy, Jessica. That's training. I've been working bars since I was 21. You learn to read people or you get hurt. True. But you read people like someone who's been professionally taught threat assessment. Military? Law enforcement? He paused, watching my face. Or witness protection. The words hung between us like a blade. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think of a response that wouldn't confirm or deny in ways that would make everything worse. Gabriel's expression softened fractionally. I'm not your enemy, but I am curious about the woman who's become the heart of my newest acquisition. A woman who's clearly running from something but chose Miami, chose visibility in a public-facing job, chose to stay in one place for 3 years despite whatever she's afraid of. That takes either stupidity or incredible courage. Maybe I'm just stubborn. That too. He straightened, pulling back to a more professional distance. I'll be here most nights for the next couple weeks. Learning the rhythms, meeting regular customers, understanding what makes the Velvet Lounge work. That means you and I will be spending considerable time in proximity. I can handle it. I'm certain you can. You strike me as someone who can handle just about anything. Gabriel moved toward the door, retrieving his coat from the rack. But Jessica, if whatever you're running from shows up here, I need to know. Not because I'm concerned about my investment, though I am, because I prefer to know what threats might walk through my door. There's no threat. Then you have nothing to worry about. He paused at the door, looking back. Although I wonder why you're gripping that bottle like a weapon, if you're really as safe as you claim. I looked down to find my hand wrapped around a whiskey bottle, knuckles white. I set it down carefully, forcing my fingers to unclench. Lock up carefully, Gabriel said. Miami's not as safe as people pretend. Then he was gone, leaving me alone in the dim bar with my racing heart and the certain knowledge that Gabriel Fioraldi knew exactly what I was, even if he didn't know the specifics yet. Over the next 4 nights, Gabriel established a pattern. He arrived at 9:30 each evening, ordered a single whiskey neat, nursed it for hours while working on his laptop or making quiet phone calls in Italian. He tipped exactly 200%. He never got drunk. And he watched me with unwavering attention that made my skin prickle with awareness. On the second night, he struck up conversations with regulars, learning names and stories with the kind of genuine interest that made people trust him. By the third night, the old-timers were seeking him out, sharing gossip and neighborhood politics like he'd been there for years instead of days. On the fourth night, I made a mistake. It was subtle, the kind of thing most people wouldn't notice. A man came in around 10, mid-40s, nondescript features, ordering beer and watching the basketball game on the television above the bar. But something about his positioning was wrong. He sat facing the mirror behind the bottles, which gave him a view of the entire room, including me, and he never actually watched the game. His eyes kept returning to my reflection. I'd been trained to notice these things, had spent 8 years honing instincts that kept me breathing. Without thinking, I shifted my position behind the bar to eliminate his sightline, put my back to the solid wall instead of the open space, and checked the exits. Gabriel saw all of it. His eyes tracked from me to the man to the exits and back. An understanding dawned across his features like sunrise. When the man left 20 minutes later, Gabriel waited exactly 3 minutes before approaching the bar. Who was he? His voice was quiet but urgent. Just a customer. You evaluated him in 2 seconds, marked him as a threat, and adjusted your defensive posture. That's not normal bartender awareness, Jessica. That's tactical training. I busied myself wiping down the already clean bar. You're reading too much into nothing. I've spent my entire adult life learning to read people. It's kept me alive in situations where mistakes are measured in body counts. Gabriel leaned in close enough that his voice was barely a murmur. Whatever you're hiding from, whoever you're afraid of, I can help. But I need to know what I'm dealing with. You can't help with this. Try me. I met his eyes finally. Saw something there beyond curiosity. Recognition, maybe. Or the kind of understanding that comes from personal experience with running and hiding and surviving. Why do you care? I asked. You bought a bar. I work here. That's the extent of our relationship. Because I know what it looks like when someone's living on borrowed time. I've been that person. Gabriel pulled back slightly, giving me space. And because the woman who's been making my investment successful deserves better than looking over her shoulder every night wondering if this is when her past catches up. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out reflexively and froze. Unknown number. Text message. One line that made my blood run cold. I haven't forgotten you, little witness. The phone slipped from my fingers. Gabriel caught it before it hit the floor, read the message, and his entire demeanor transformed from curious businessman to something far more dangerous. How long has this been happening? First time. My voice sounded distant even to my own ears. It's the first time he's made contact since Chicago. Chicago. Gabriel's jaw tightened. Who's looking for you in Chicago? Someone I testified against. Someone who should still be in prison. I grabbed the phone back, deleting the message with shaking fingers. I need to leave. Tonight. I need to disappear again. No. The word was absolute. Running is what he expects. Running makes you vulnerable, isolated, easy to pick off when he finally corners you. Gabriel moved around the bar, invading my space in a way that should have felt threatening but somehow didn't. I have resources, protection, ways to keep you safe that federal bureaucracy can't match. You don't understand what you're offering. Then explain it to me. All of it. Starting with why someone in Chicago wants you dead, and ending with why you thought tending bar in Miami was a sustainable strategy. The last customers filtered out. I locked the door, flipped the sign, and for the first time in 8 years, considered telling someone the complete truth about that night in the alley, about Victor Volkov, about the 26 months I'd spent looking over my shoulder waiting for retribution that I'd convinced myself might never come. Gabriel pulled out a chair at the nearest table, gestured for me to sit, and waited with a patience that felt infinite. His name is Victor Volkov, I began. And I'm the reason he went to prison for murder. Gabriel drove us to a 24-hour diner on the edge of downtown, the kind of place where the fluorescent lights buzzed too loud, and the coffee tasted like it had been sitting since the previous shift. At 2 a.m, we were the only customers besides a trucker hunched over pancakes, and a woman reading a paperback novel with such intensity, I wondered if she was actually absorbing any words. We slid into a corner booth. Red vinyl cracked in places where duct tape held the stuffing inside. The waitress, somewhere in her 60s with hair dyed an improbable shade of copper, brought coffee without asking, and menus she clearly didn't expect us to read. "Take your time, sugar," she said, though her tone suggested the opposite. Gabriel waited until she retreated behind the counter before speaking. "Start from the beginning. Don't leave anything out." I wrapped my hands around the coffee mug, letting the heat anchor me to something tangible, while I excavated memories I'd spent 8 years trying to bury. I was 19, working at an Italian restaurant in Chicago, one of those places where the food was decent and the tips were good if you smiled at the right tables. My parents had died my senior year of high school, car accident on black ice, and the insurance money was enough for community college, but not much else. So I worked nights, took classes during the day, thought I had everything figured out. Gabriel listened without interrupting, his dark eyes fixed on my face with an intensity that would have felt invasive from anyone else. August 17th. Wednesday night. Late summer when Chicago gets sticky and humid, and everyone's temper runs short. I was closing, taking trash to the dumpster in the alley behind the restaurant. Should have been quick, in and out. But I heard voices. Two men arguing in that quiet, controlled way that means real violence is about to happen. The memory crystallized with the kind of clarity trauma provides. Viktor Volkov, though I hadn't known his name then, standing over a man who was begging in Russian or Ukrainian, or some language I couldn't identify. The streetlight catching the gun in Viktor's hand. The wet sound of a bullet entering flesh. The way the victim crumpled like a puppet with cut strings. I froze. Stupidest possible reaction. But my body just stopped working. And Viktor looked up and saw me standing there with a trash bag in my hands, probably looking exactly as terrified as I felt. I took a sip of coffee, bitter and too hot. He smiled. Actually smiled, like we were sharing a joke instead of a murder. Then he wiped his hands on a handkerchief and walked away like nothing had happened. But you reported it, Gabriel said quietly. I ran inside, called 911, told them everything I'd seen. The police came, found the body, found shell casings, started an investigation, and 3 days later, FBI agents showed up at my apartment saying I was in danger, that Viktor Volkov was connected to organized crime networks across the eastern seaboard, that witnesses against him had a habit of disappearing or recanting their testimony. The waitress reappeared with a pot of coffee, refilling both our mugs without comment before vanishing again. They offered witness protection. New name, new city, new life in exchange for testifying. I was 19 and terrified and had no family left to worry about. So I said yes, spent the next 6 months in protective custody, memorizing details, preparing for trial, learning how to be someone named Jessica Turner instead of whatever I'd been before. Gabriel's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. What was your real name? Does it matter? That person died when I watched Viktor put a bullet in a man's skull. Jessica Turner is who survived. I traced the rim of the coffee mug with one finger. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Viktor stared at me the entire time I testified. Never broke eye contact. Never showed emotion. His lawyer tried to tear apart my credibility. Claimed I was lying for attention or money or some other invented motivation. But the evidence supported my testimony. The jury convicted, and Viktor got life without parole. 26-year sentence for first-degree murder. Gabriel murmured. I looked up sharply. How did you know that? Because Paolo Russo, the man Viktor killed that night, was my half-brother. The words landed like stones in still water. Son of my father's mistress. Born 6 years before me, to a woman in Naples my father visited twice a year when he claimed to be conducting business. I didn't know Paolo existed until after he died, when my father had to explain why he was flying to Chicago for the funeral of someone none of us had heard of. The air between us charged with implications I was still processing. Your father was connected to organized crime. Is connected. Antonio Fioraldi doesn't retire from family business. He just delegates more as he gets older. Gabriel's jaw tightened fractionally. Paolo was trying to build his own operation in Chicago, thought he could expand family influence without approval. Stupid and arrogant, but he was 28 and believed himself invincible. Viktor was sent to deliver a message about territorial respect. The message was a bullet. So you've been tracking me for 8 months because I testified against your brother's killer? Half-brother. And not quite. Gabriel pulled out his phone, swiped to a folder, and turned the screen to face me. Photographs filled the display. Grainy surveillance photos of a man who looked like Viktor, but with shaggier hair and a beard that obscured half his face. Newspaper articles with headlines about prison escapes. Crime scene photos I wish I hadn't seen. Viktor escaped from maximum security 4 weeks ago. Killed 2 guards during the breakout, both shot execution style. Gabriel swiped to the next image. 36 hours later, Marcus Thompson was found in his apartment in Cleveland. Throat cut, apartment ransacked. Marcus testified against Viktor as a forensic accountant who traced money laundering schemes. My hands started shaking. Gabriel reached across the table, steadied the coffee mug before I could spill it. 72 hours after that, Elena Rodriguez disappeared from her home in Philadelphia. She was a neighbor who witnessed Victor meeting with known associates before the murder. They found her body 3 days later in a warehouse outside the city. Another swipe, another crime scene I couldn't unsee. Tortured before she died. Victor wanted information about other witnesses. Agent Harris, I whispered. He called me 3 weeks ago saying he was being transferred. Agent Harris died 3.5 weeks ago. Single gunshot to the head in his car outside a coffee shop where he was meeting with the first witness. Victor made it look like a robbery, but the FBI knows better. Gabriel's voice was clinically calm, delivering devastating news with surgical precision. The agent who called you was likely someone inside the federal system who's been feeding Victor information about witness locations. Harris tried to warn you without compromising himself, and died for it. The diner felt too bright, too exposed. I looked around at the trucker, the woman with her book, the waitress wiping down counters, and wondered if any of them could be watching me, reporting back to Victor about the witness who'd survived this long. "Why haven't you gone to the FBI yourself?" I asked. "If you've been tracking all this, you must have evidence. Because the FBI has a leak, possibly multiple leaks, and I don't know who to trust." Gabriel closed his phone, pocketed it. "Because my family's business interests make federal agents uncomfortable, and approaching them about a fugitive hunting witnesses would invite scrutiny I can't afford. And because 8 months ago, when I started researching what happened to Paolo, I became curious about you. Curious. A 19-year-old girl with no connections to organized crime. No reason to risk her life testifying except that she saw something horrible and couldn't stay silent. That kind of courage is rare." He paused. "I wanted to understand who you were. Started with public records, moved to hiring investigators to track Jessica Turner's movements, eventually found you here in Miami pouring drinks and pretending you didn't have a past. That's stalking. That's due diligence before making a business acquisition." Gabriel's mouth quirked in something that wasn't quite a smile. "I'd already planned to buy the Velvet Lounge as an investment property. Discovering you worked there was convenient coincidence. Finding out Victor had escaped changed my timeline for making contact. The pieces were assembling into a picture I didn't want to see. You think Victor knows where I am. I think Victor is systematically eliminating everyone who testified against him, and you're the primary witness. The one whose testimony was most damaging, most detailed, most impossible to discredit." Gabriel leaned forward, voice dropping lower. "He'll save you for last because you're the biggest threat. But he's coming. And when he gets here, federal protection won't be sufficient. So what are you offering? Private security? A safe house? Something Victor's world understands and respects universally." Gabriel reached into his jacket, pulled out a small velvet box, and set it on the table between us. "Marriage. To someone with family connections strong enough that killing you would start a war nobody can afford." I stared at the box like it might contain a live grenade. "That's insane. That's survival. In my father's world, in the networks that overlap with Victor's operations, marriage creates alliances that are sacred, untouchable. You become family, which means attacking you attacks me, which means attacking the Fioraldi network. Victor is dangerous, but he's not suicidal. We don't know each other. We've had exactly one real conversation. You can't seriously expect me to marry you. I expect you to consider the alternative." Gabriel opened the box, revealing a simple gold band that caught the diner's harsh lights. "Keep running until Victor corners you in some city where you have no resources and no backup. Or stay here under protection that comes with legal weight and social consequences for anyone who harms you. This is medieval. Using marriage as a protection racket. Welcome to the world that killed my half-brother and has been hunting you for 8 years." Gabriel's expression was completely serious. "I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not asking for anything beyond the legal contract and public appearance of marriage. You stay in my apartment, you get 24/7 security, you continue working at the lounge if you want or find different employment if you prefer. We maintain separate lives with one crucial difference. The ring on your finger that tells Victor killing you means starting a war with people who have longer reach and deeper pockets than he does." The waitress reappeared, asking if we wanted food. Gabriel ordered eggs and toast neither of us would eat. I asked for pancakes I had no appetite for. She left again, and the silence stretched between us. "Why would you do this?" I finally asked. Risk your family's reputation, your business interests, your entire life for someone you've been stalking for 8 months? Because Paolo was my brother, and the woman who made sure his killer went to prison deserves to live long enough to build an actual life. Gabriel closed the box, pushed it across the table toward me, and because I've spent my entire adult life watching people get consumed by the world my father built. If I can keep one person from becoming another casualty, maybe that matters. I picked up the box, felt the weight of it in my palm. Inside was a future I'd never imagined, with a man I barely knew, protected by the very world I'd been running from. I need to think about it. You have until tomorrow noon. After that, I'm moving you to a secure location with or without your cooperation, because Victor sent that text message for a reason. He wants you scared and running, which means he's close enough to track your movements. Gabriel pulled out his wallet, left cash on the table for food we wouldn't finish. I'll drive you home. You'll pack essentials. Tomorrow morning you'll either call me accepting my offer, or I'll have security pick you up anyway. That's not really giving me a choice. No, he agreed. It's not, because I've seen the crime scene photos of what Victor does to witnesses he catches, and I'm not interested in seeing you become the next set of images in an FBI file. We left the diner as the sun started bleeding orange across Miami's skyline. Gabriel drove me back to my apartment building, a converted warehouse with questionable plumbing and neighbors who mostly minded their own business. He walked me to my door despite my protests, checked inside with professional efficiency that suggested he'd done this before. Lock everything. Don't answer the door for anyone. I'll have someone watching the building until morning. He handed me a business card with a phone number written on the back. My personal line. If anything happens, anything at all, you call immediately. Okay. He turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. Jessica, I know this is insane. I know I'm asking you to trust a stranger with your life, but I've never let anyone under my protection get hurt, and I don't plan to start now. Then he was gone, and I was alone in my apartment with a velvet box containing a marriage proposal from a Mafia boss who'd been tracking me for months because I'd witnessed his half-brother's murder. I set the box on my kitchen counter and stared at it until sunrise painted my walls gold and pink, wondering if survival was worth the price Gabriel was asking me to pay. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Instead, I sat on my couch with every light in the apartment blazing, the velvet box open on the coffee table, and my laptop searching for information about Viktor Volkov that the FBI had probably classified or scrubbed from public access. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Viktor wasn't just connected to organized crime. He was a specialist, a cleaner, the person criminal networks hired when they needed someone eliminated quietly and thoroughly. Born in Vladivostok, trained in military intelligence before the Soviet Union collapsed, then freelanced his particular skills to whoever could afford his rates. The murder I'd witnessed in Chicago was supposed to be a professional execution, clean and untraceable. My presence had turned it into evidence. By 4 a.m, I'd read everything available about the 2 witnesses Victor had already killed. Marcus Thompson, 43, married with 2 kids, worked as a forensic accountant, and had traced money laundering schemes back to Victor's employers. Elena Rodriguez, 38, single mother of 1, happened to live in the apartment next to where Victor had met with associates the week before Paolo's murder. Both had been in federal protection. Both had been found within days of Victor's escape. I pulled up the photo Gabriel had shown me at the diner, the crime scene image I wished I could unsee. Elena's body positioned deliberately. A message to anyone else thinking about testifying. Victor didn't just kill his targets. He made examples of them. At 6 a.m, as gray dawn light started filtering through my windows, I found it. An envelope that had been slipped under my door sometime during the night. Standard white paper with no markings. Inside was a single photograph, aged and creased like it had been carried in someone's pocket for years. It was me, 19 years old, coming out of the courthouse after testifying. Federal agents flanking me on both sides. Someone had drawn a red X over my face in marker, the kind of deliberate defacement that communicated clear intent. My hands shook holding the photograph. Victor had been here, not just in Miami, not just in my neighborhood, but at my actual door, while I'd been sitting 3 feet away researching his methodology. He could have killed me then. Could have kicked in the flimsy door and finished what he'd started 8 years ago. But he hadn't. Because Victor didn't just want me dead, he wanted me terrified first. I grabbed my phone, dialed the number Gabriel had written on his business card. He answered on the second ring, voice alert despite the early hour. Jessica. He was here. At my apartment. Last night while you and I were talking, he left something under my door. The words tumbled out too fast. A photograph from Chicago with my face marked out. He knows exactly where I live, Gabriel. He's been watching me. Get out, now. Don't pack, don't hesitate. Just leave the apartment immediately and walk to the corner of 5th and Washington. I'll have someone there in 3 minutes. I need my things. I can't just leave everything. Your things are replaceable. You're not. His voice carried absolute authority. 3 minutes, Jessica. Move. I grabbed my purse, my phone, the photograph because evidence mattered, and ran. Took the stairs instead of the elevator, burst out the side exit into humid Miami dawn, and sprinted the 2 blocks to 5th and Washington without looking back. A black SUV with tinted windows pulled up exactly as I reached the corner. The passenger door opened from inside. Get in, a voice said. Male, gravelly, carrying the weight of someone accustomed to being obeyed. I hesitated for half a second before climbing into the vehicle. The man in the driver's seat was maybe 50, built like a boxer who'd stayed in shape, with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, and eyes that catalogued me efficiently. Vincent, he said by way of introduction. Mr. Fioraldi's head of security. We're taking you somewhere safe until he can meet us. Where? Hotel in Coral Gables. Private suite, registered under a business account that has no connection to your name. You'll stay there until Mr. Fioraldi makes arrangements. Vincent pulled into traffic with the practiced ease of someone who knew Miami's patterns intimately. Did anyone follow you from your apartment? I don't think so. I didn't see anyone. Doesn't mean they weren't there. Victor Volkov is professionally trained in surveillance. If he wanted to track you without being noticed, you wouldn't see him until he wanted you to. The statement didn't exactly comfort me. I clutched my purse in my lap, watching the city slide past through tinted windows, feeling like I'd stepped off a cliff and was still waiting to hit ground. The hotel was exactly as Vincent described. Upscale but not ostentatious. The kind of place business travelers chose for convenience rather than luxury. He walked me through a side entrance that bypassed the main desk, up a service elevator to the 8th floor, and into a suite that probably cost more per night than I made in a week. Lock everything. Don't order room service. Don't answer the door unless you verify through the peephole that it's me or Mr. Fioraldi. There's food in the kitchenette, toiletries in the bathroom, clothes in the closet that should approximately fit. Vincent handed me a key card and a phone, newer model than the one I carried. This phone is clean, encrypted, untraceable. Mr. Fioraldi's number is programmed in. Use it instead of your personal device. How long do I need to stay here? Until Mr. Fioraldi determines the next step. Could be hours, could be days. Vincent moved toward the door. For what it's worth, you made the right choice running. Victor showing up at your apartment means he's in the endgame phase. Whatever you decide about Mr. Fioraldi's offer, you can't go back to your old life. That option ended the moment Victor left that photograph. Then he was gone, and I was alone in a hotel suite that smelled like lemon furniture polish and recycled air, wearing yesterday's clothes and clutching a photograph of my 19-year-old self marked for death. I showered in water hot enough to scald, scrubbing away the feeling of being watched that clung to my skin. The clothes Vincent mentioned were folded neatly in the closet, still had tags attached. Simple pieces in muted colors. Nothing flashy or memorable. Practical choices made by someone who understood the need to blend in. Everything fit perfectly, which meant Gabriel had been studying me longer and more carefully than I'd realized. The observation should have felt invasive, but instead registered as thorough. Gabriel didn't do anything halfway, including protecting a witness who'd helped convict his half-brother's killer. The encrypted phone buzzed around 9. Text message from a number I didn't recognize but assumed was Gabriel. Meeting with associates this morning to arrange security protocols. We'll come by the hotel at noon to discuss next steps. Don't leave the suite for any reason. I typed back a simple acknowledgement, then spent the next 3 hours researching everything I could find about Gabriel Fioraldi, using the hotel's Wi-Fi and my old phone that I'd turned off immediately after Vincent's warning. Gabriel was 34, born in Naples and moved to the United States when he was 12 after his father established operations in Miami. Educated at Columbia, degree in business and economics, worked in legitimate real estate development before taking over his father's more complicated interests 5 years ago, when Antonio Fioraldi had a stroke that left him partially paralyzed. On paper, Gabriel was clean. Property investments, restaurant partnerships, import-export businesses that probably involved some creative accounting, but nothing explicitly illegal. The kind of portfolio that let him move in legitimate business circles while maintaining connections to his father's less savory networks. Between the lines, in the gaps where information should have been but wasn't, lived a different story. Gabriel had been questioned twice by federal authorities about associates who later turned up dead. He'd been present at meetings where FBI surveillance suggested organized crime discussions were happening. His name appeared in sealed court documents connected to racketeering investigations that never quite produced charges. He was everything I'd been taught to avoid, running from, terrified of, and he was offering to marry me to keep me alive. The knock at noon was precise. 3 measured raps that announced themselves without urgency. I checked the peephole, saw Gabriel standing in the hallway wearing a charcoal suit and an expression of controlled concern, and unlocked the door. He entered with the same efficiency Vincent had shown, checking the suite's layout and sightlines before turning his full attention to me. "Show me the photograph." I handed it over. He studied it for a long moment, jaw tightening fractionally as he processed the implications. "This is from the day you testified. I remember seeing news coverage, the federal agents escorting you out through the side entrance to avoid reporters." Gabriel set the photograph on the coffee table like evidence in a case he was building. "Victor kept this for 8 years, carried it as a reminder of unfinished business. He wants me scared. He wants you isolated and vulnerable. Fear is just the tool he's using to achieve that." Gabriel sat down on the couch, gestured for me to take the chair across from him. "I've spent the morning making arrangements. Private security team around the clock, safe transportation, secure locations. But all of that requires your cooperation, which means I need your answer. About marriage. About survival. Marriage is just the mechanism." He pulled out the velvet box again, the ring inside catching light from the suite's windows. "I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not asking you to pretend this is anything other than a strategic alliance. But I am asking you to trust that I can keep you alive when federal protection has already failed twice." I stared at the ring, at the simple gold band that represented a future I'd never imagined. What happens after? If you catch Victor, if the threat ends, what happens to this strategic alliance? We negotiate new terms. Annulment if you want. Continued arrangement if it serves both our interests. Actual relationship if something develops organically. But that's a conversation for when you're not actively being hunted. Gabriel's voice was measured, laying out facts without embellishment. "Right now, you have 2 choices. Accept my protection and the marriage that comes with it, or I put you on a plane to somewhere even I can't easily track and you spend the rest of your life running from shadows. Those aren't really choices." "No," he agreed. "They're not. But they're what's available given current circumstances." I thought about Agent Harris, who'd tried to protect me and died for the effort. About Marcus Thompson and Elena Rodriguez, who'd trusted federal systems and paid with their lives. About 8 years of looking over my shoulder, changing my name, pretending I didn't have a past that wanted me dead. If I say yes, this happens immediately. No waiting period, no time to process. We have a courthouse appointment at 2:00 this afternoon. Private ceremony, judge I trust. Minimal witnesses. You'll sign the marriage license as Jessica Turner, which makes it legally binding under your protected identity. The ring goes on your finger, and by 3:00 you're under protection that extends beyond federal bureaucracy. And I move in with you. Into my apartment, yes. Separate bedroom, separate space, whatever boundaries you need to feel secure. But we maintain the appearance of a legitimate marriage, which means being seen together in public occasionally, attending events as a couple, presenting unified front to anyone checking whether this is real. I picked up the photograph Victor had left, studied my 19-year-old face marked for death. That girl had been brave enough to testify despite knowing the consequences. She deserved better than dying in a hotel room waiting for a killer who'd spent 8 years planning revenge. Okay, I said. "I'll marry you." Gabriel's expression didn't change, but something in his posture relaxed fractionally. He stood, extended his hand formally like we were sealing a business deal, rather than binding our lives together. "You won't regret this decision." "I already regret it, but it's still the right choice." "Fair enough." He checked his watch. Expensive piece I didn't recognize the brand of. "Vincent will bring appropriate clothing for the ceremony. Nothing elaborate, just professional attire that photographs well if anyone decides to check public records. We'll leave here at 1:30, take separate cars to avoid obvious connection, and meet at the courthouse side entrance." This all feels surreal. That's shock processing trauma. It'll fade once immediate danger passes and you adjust to new circumstances. Gabriel moved toward the door, paused with his hand on the handle. "Jessica, I know you don't trust me yet. I know this entire situation violates every instinct you've developed about staying invisible and avoiding connections. But I'm good at protecting what's mine, and as of 2 o'clock this afternoon, you'll be legally mine to protect." The possessive phrasing should have triggered alarm bells. Instead, it registered as comforting in a way I didn't want to examine too closely. Vincent arrived at 1 with clothing as promised. Navy dress in a professional cut that hit just below the knee, low heels I could actually walk in, minimal jewelry that looked expensive without being flashy. Everything fit perfectly because of course it did. Gabriel's attention to detail extended to knowing my exact measurements without ever asking. The drive to the courthouse was silent, Vincent navigating downtown traffic with professional efficiency. Gabriel was already waiting when we arrived, standing in the shadow of a side entrance with a man I assumed was his lawyer, based on the expensive suit and leather briefcase. "This is Marco," Gabriel said by way of introduction. "He'll serve as witness along with Vincent. The ceremony will take approximately 7 minutes. Then we'll handle paperwork and you'll leave with me. 7 minutes to change my entire life." Seemed both too fast and not fast enough. The judge was a woman in her 60s, who looked like she'd performed this particular ritual more times than she could count. She read through the legal requirements in a monotone that suggested deep boredom, asked if we understood the commitment we were making, and didn't seem particularly interested in our answers. "Do you, Gabriele Luciano Fioraldi, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." No hesitation, no uncertainty. "And do you, Jessica Marie Turner, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" I looked at Gabriel, at the man who'd been tracking me for months, because I'd testified against his brother's killer, who was offering protection wrapped in marriage, who represented everything I'd been running from, and the only chance I had at survival. "I do." The judge pronounced us married with the same disinterested efficiency she'd used throughout the ceremony. Gabriel slid the ring onto my finger, the gold band warm against my skin like it had been waiting for this moment. He leaned in for the traditional kiss, brief and chaste, and utterly devoid of romance. "Congratulations," the judge said, already reaching for the next file on her desk. "Next." And just like that, I was married to a man I barely knew, wearing a ring that marked me as protected property in a world I'd spent 8 years trying to escape, betting my survival on a strategic alliance that couldn't possibly end well. Gabriel's apartment occupied the entire 23rd floor of a high-rise overlooking Biscayne Bay. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of water that shifted from turquoise to deep blue depending on the light. The furniture was expensive but comfortable, the kind of understated luxury that came from having money so long you stopped trying to prove it. "Your room is down this hall," Gabriel said, leading me past his office and what appeared to be a home gym. "Private bathroom, walk-in closet, everything you should need. Vincent had your belongings moved from your apartment this morning. I took the liberty of having him collect everything rather than making you go back." The bedroom was larger than my entire previous apartment. King-sized bed with gray linens, seating area by the window, original artwork on the walls. And in the corner, incongruous but somehow perfect, my grandmother's quilt folded across a chair, my small collection of books arranged on a shelf, my few personal items carefully placed like they'd always belonged here. I asked Vincent to include anything that seemed personally significant, Gabriel said from the doorway. "If he missed something, let me know and I'll have it retrieved. This is fine." More than fine. I touched the quilt, felt tears threatening and forced them back. "Thank you for bringing my things. You're my wife now. Your comfort matters." He checked his watch again. "I have a meeting this evening that can't be postponed. There's food in the kitchen, my office is off limits, but the rest of the apartment is yours to explore. If you need anything, my direct number is programmed into the secure phone. What do I do now? Whatever you want, within reason. Read, watch television, sleep if you can. Adjust to being safe for the first time in 8 years." Gabriel's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "You've survived a long time by running, Jessica. You can stop now. That's what this marriage guarantees." He left me alone in my new bedroom, in my new life, wearing a wedding ring I hadn't asked for but desperately needed. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the expensive mattress compress beneath me, and tried to convince myself that marrying a mafia boss to escape an assassin was a reasonable survival strategy. Through the windows, Miami spread out in golden afternoon light, beautiful and dangerous and utterly indifferent to the choices we made to stay alive. I wondered how long it would take before this started feeling normal, or if Gabriel's protection would just be another kind of cage with better furniture and more complicated locks. The ring caught light, glinting with deceptive simplicity. I was married to Gabriel Fioraldi, for better or worse, in danger and in safety, until Victor was caught or I was dead. I hoped it would be the former. 3 weeks of living with Gabriel established rhythms I hadn't anticipated. He left for work before 7 most mornings, returning anywhere between 9 at night and 2 in the morning, depending on what he vaguely described as business obligations. I didn't ask for details. Plausible deniability felt safer than confirmed knowledge about whatever kept him occupied. The apartment became familiar in increments. I learned which floorboards creaked, where the sun hit hardest during afternoon hours, the precise angle needed to coax the espresso machine into cooperation. Gabriel had shown me the basics that first morning, patient as I fumbled with knobs and pressurized steam, and now I could produce something approaching decent coffee without scalding myself. He'd arranged freelance design work through contacts he claimed were legitimate, though I suspected at least some operated in gray areas where business and family interest blurred. The projects were simple enough: logo designs for restaurants, branding packages for import companies, website layouts for businesses that might or might not be fronts for money laundering. I didn't examine too closely. The work paid well, kept my skills sharp, and filled hours that would otherwise stretch empty and anxious. Mornings developed a pattern. I'd wake around 6:30 to find Gabriel already dressed, usually in the kitchen with his tablet and first cup of espresso, dark hair still damp from his shower. He'd nod acknowledgement without speaking, comfortable with silence in a way that took me days to adjust to. Most people felt compelled to fill quiet spaces with conversation. Gabriel seemed to prefer the absence of unnecessary words. By the second week, I'd started making coffee for both of us. Small gesture, barely worth mentioning, but Gabriel noticed. I'd catch him studying me when he thought I wasn't looking, expression calculating like he was solving an equation that kept producing unexpected variables. "You take yours with cream," he observed one morning. "2 sugars. But you didn't the first few days." I was being polite. Didn't want to seem demanding. "This is your home now. Be demanding." He returned to his tablet, scrolling through what looked like financial reports. "I prefer people who state their actual preferences rather than performing politeness." I filed that information away with the other details I was accumulating about Gabriel Fioraldi. He valued directness, disliked pretense, kept his actual thoughts locked behind careful control that slipped occasionally when he thought himself unobserved, like when he spoke to his mother on Sunday mornings, his voice softening into Italian that flowed too quickly for me to follow, even with the limited phrases I'd been teaching myself through language apps. The security protocols were extensive but subtle. Vincent or another member of Gabriel's team accompanied me anywhere outside the building, which meant I rarely left. Grocery deliveries were screened in the lobby. The windows were bulletproof, something Gabriel mentioned casually while showing me how to operate the automated shades. Cameras covered every angle of the hallway outside our door, feeds monitored by people I never met, but whose presence I felt constantly. "Am I actually safe, or just in a prettier cage?" I asked one evening after Gabriel returned from a particularly late meeting. He'd loosened his tie, shed his jacket, looked tired in a way that made him seem more human and less like the controlled businessman he presented to the world. "You're safe. The cage description isn't entirely inaccurate, but it's temporary. Once Victor is neutralized, security can